This is the exam for review. It covers chapters 8 and 9. Again, it will be just like the other 3 exams, 100 points. You will get an hour or 2 hours for this test. You do get 2 hours for this test this time because there's more forms to upload than what there was in the first 3 tests. So 2 hours for this one. The test is June 18th. It will open at 12 a.m. and close at 11:59 p.m. So again, you do have that whole day. Allow that 2 hours to take the test. Watch your clock so that you can get your forms uploaded in time. For all the tests, just like before, make sure you have a calculator, not your cell phone, and please no notes, no demos, nobody else taking your test, or using the internet for help as well. You can have your 3x5 card or a sticky note with the formulas for the day's sales uncollected and the accounts receivable turnover, and I'll go over those in just a few minutes. All right, chapter 8, that was establishing petty cash, and it was also the bank reconciliation. So I'll go over those 2 items first from chapter 8. So for petty cash, remember petty cash is a small amount of money that we keep to pay for small things, like if we just need a book of stamps, or if we want to take everybody out for an ice cream cone, we just take the money from the petty cash fund, and then we go and pay for those items, bring back a receipt and the change, and put those in. Somebody is responsible for balancing out the petty cash fund. That is separate from writing checks, balancing the checkbook, and making the deposit. So remember those separation of duties. When we establish the petty cash fund, remember petty cash is an asset. You're going to debit petty cash and credit cash. So you write a check, take it to your bank, get the cash, bring it back and put it into your petty cash fund. When you go to reimburse the petty cash fund, you want to make sure that you take your receipts and you put them into piles according to different categories, like maybe repairs, miscellaneous, etc. And then you'll journalize that as you go. So a very good example that I want you to look at to study is exercise 8.8 and exercise 8.9. So for exercise 8.8, you establish the petty cash fund at $350. So here we debit petty cash and credit cash $350. Now with this one, there was some transportation costs. Remember that we're still using the perpetual inventory method. So anytime that we're dealing with transportation, is going to go with our merchandise inventory. And then you had postage and miscellaneous. So so with this one, there was $40 spent on transportation, $123 for postage, and then $80 for miscellaneous expense. I need to look this one up real quick. With this exercise that you had here, the amount that was left over in the petty cash fund was $104. And so with the 40, the 123, and the 80. So if you take the 40, 123, and 80, that equals 243 that was spent. There was $104 that was left over, so that brings you to 347. The petty cash fund is at 350, so you're short $3. Again, the 40 plus the 123 and the 80 is 243, plus 104 left in the petty cash fund brings you to 347, and the fund was at 350, so you're short $3. So in order to balance this out, we need to debit our inventory, debit our postage expense, and debit our miscellaneous. Then we will also debit our cash short and over for $3, and then the cash will end up being $346. And then with your 104, that brings you back to $350. This company wanted to increase the petty cash fund to $400. Watch that wording. Increase the fund to $400. So that's an extra 50. So you take the 350 minus the 400 they want to bring it up to, and then that's going to be another debit to petty cash and a credit to cash for $50. All right, then for the next one, exercise 8.9, this company established the petty cash fund at $1,050. Debit petty cash, credit cash. Okay, And then there was $120 spent on transportation, which is merchandise inventory, $369 for postage, and $240 for miscellaneous expense. If we take the 120 plus the 369 and the 240, that equals 729. And there was 326 left over. So we add that. That leaves 1,055. This was established at 1,050, so it's over by $5. So we debit we debit the inventory, debit postage, debit miscellaneous, and this time because it's over, we credit cash short and over $5. Add this all up, debits minus credits, and you get 724. And then again, with the 724 and the 326, that brings us back to 1,050. Now, this company also wanted to increase the petty cash fund up to $1,200. And so we debit petty cash and credit cash 150. It was at 1,050, and then they want to bring it up. So that's going to be a 150 debit to petty cash and a credit to cash. Now, if a company wanted to decrease their petty cash fund, what you want to do is, like, let's say it's going to take it down $50, then you would debit cash and credit petty cash. So if you decrease the fund, it's the opposite: debit cash, credit petty cash fund. Okay, so that is establishing the petty cash, replenishing the petty cash, and then decreasing the petty cash fund. All right, then you have also in Chapter 8 where we reconcile the bank statement. Now, what I'm going to do for the bank statement on your forms is that you're going to get a form, and it'll have your 3 lines up at the top, and it'll have book side or bank side and book side. So then everything else will be blank. So you'll put the name of the company, bank reconciliation, and then the specific date mentioned in the problem. On your bank side, you're going to list the balance that the bank says you have, and on your book side, you will list what you say that you have in your cash ledger. Now for this one here, there was an outstanding deposit. Remember, we add those in on our bank side, and then the outstanding checks are deducted from the bank side. Any proceeds from notes, remember that these are our accounts receivables that couldn't pay within the terms of their sale, and so they were extending a loan to them through our financial institution, and so the proceeds that we get back are added to our book side, and the bank puts that in there, so we have to record that. So on this one, there's proceeds from a note, so we add that in. Remember, if we allow people to write checks, some people write checks and they don't have the money in their account, or there was a mistake and it's what we call bounced. So an insufficient funds check, NSF, that is something that we already deposited and we need to take back out because the check was no good. So that's a deduction. Service charges are deducted from our book side. And then any errors, some are added, some are subtracted. It just depends on what that situation is. So, so again, for the branch company, on your book side, on your bank side, you add in the deposit, subtract out the outstanding checks, and then you get your adjusted bank balance. On the book side, we add in the proceeds of the note, subtract the NSF check, the service charge, and then the error in this case, and then when we take and add and then subtract, both sides should equal out. Now, remember, anything that affects your checkbook side, you have to have entries for. So it's best to start with the plus. So debit your cash, credit your notes receivable. That will close that out. Then here, you had an NSF check. We have to reopen the accounts receivable with a debit and credit cash because the money was taken back out of our checking account. Service charge can go to service charge or miscellaneous. So this is a debit to miscellaneous and a credit to cash for the service charge. And then this was a rent mistake of the check. So we debited rent and credited the cash. So that's how you do that. Again, I'll give you just the framework of this. You'll have 3 blank lines. You'll have the bank side and the book side, and then you'll journalize anything that affects your book side. Okay, accounts receivable turnover, and your day sales uncollected. I'll come back to the ratios. Chapter 9. This was credit cards and our bad debts. So I know it might be a little bit difficult. This might have been a little bit harder for you, but remember that companies do take credit cards. We would be putting ourselves at kind of a disadvantage if we did not accept debit and credit cards. But remember that there is a fee associated with offering those to our customers. So we do have to spend a little money to make some money as well. So with that, you want to remember with your credit card sales. Now with the credit card sales, we're going to look at exercise 9.2. And this was credit card sales from with a 4% fee. So they were sales of $8,400, and then there was a credit card fee expense of 4%. So for April 8th on exercise 9.2, you debit the cash, you debit your credit card expense, and you credit the sales. So the sales here are your credit, and then you calculate out 4%, 0.04 is your fee, and then take your sales minus your fee, and that will give you your cash debit. You have to record the sale at the wholesale price. This is retail, this is wholesale, cost of goods sold, and merchandise inventory for, again, the wholesale price. And then it just repeated itself. A different card had a 2.5% fee, so it was $5,600 in sales. 2.5% fee is $140, so your cash is $5,460 here. And then again, recording the sale with cost of goods sold and inventory. All right, so that's your credit cards. Then you're going to calculate the amount of allowance for doubtful accounts using the aging method. Now, the aging method is where we look at how many days past due that they are and what we think is going to become uncollectible. So this is exercise 9.14, and you'll be given the amounts that are not yet due and the percent that the company thinks will become uncollectible. So in this case, you have this exercise here. So of the not yet due, there was 396,000 imbalances, and they think that 1% or 3,960 will become uncollectible. 1 to 30 days past due, there's 90,000 imbalances. They think that 2% or 0.02 for $1,800 will become uncollectible. 31 to 60 days past due, there's balances of 36,000. They think that 5% or 1,800 will become uncollectible. And then there's 61 to 90 days past due, balances of 18,000. They think that 7% or 1,260 will become uncollectible. Of the over 90 days, there's balances of 30,000. And I think that 10% or 3,000 will become uncollectible. So again, you just have to turn the percent into a decimal. You add up the amount, and that gives you what they think will become uncollectible. Now, remember, with all of your problems, you need to look to see, is there money left over in the allowance for doubtful accounts? Remember, this only affects accounts receivable, not your other methods of total sales or credit card sales. It doesn't affect that. It's just your accounts receivable balances. So in this case, there was 3,600 left over credit balance. And so you don't have to adjust for that much for the next year. So it's bad debts expense, allowance for doubtful accounts. You're going to take the 11,820 and subtract the 3,600. And so that's what you'll write up the adjusting entry for of 8,220. In part C of this problem, there was a $100 debit, which means the company underestimated. More people didn't pay than what they thought. So there's $100 that they have to cover, so to speak. So you have to add that to the amount, the 11,820, and so the adjustment is going to be 11,920. Bad debts expense, allowance for doubtful accounts. Same two titles for both different situations. All right, then you're going to estimate bad debts using the accounts receivable balance and the credit card sales. So you had a couple problems with those as well. And with that one, let me see here. So this is exercise 917, and the company thinks that 3% of their credit sales are going to become uncollectible. So the balances of those are 300,000 of their credit sales, and they think that 3% or 9,000 will become uncollectible. Bad debts expense, allowance for doubtful accounts, and then again you just put the amount there, debit the expense and credit the allowance. 9,000. They think that 6% of accounts receivable balances will become uncollectible, and that was 125,000. And so they think that 6% will become uncollectible, or 7,500. There was a debit balance, which means they underestimated. So you have to add that to the new estimation, and you get 12,500. Bad debts expense, allowance for doubtful accounts. So that your balance is there as well. So debit means they underestimated. You have to add that to your estimation. Credit means that they underestimated or overestimated, sorry. And that means that you can subtract that from your estimation before you write up your entry for that. All right, you had lots of problems with chapters 8 and 9 to practice with. So again, petty cash, balancing out your bank reconciliation, and then you had the credit card sales, and then the 3 methods of figuring out how much your bad debt or uncollectible accounts will be for the year. The last 2 items, again, are the ratios. And so I'll show you first the accounts receivable turnover. For the accounts receivable turnover, this is from chapter 9. That's on page 339 is the formula. Net sales divided by your average accounts receivables. So if I give you the average accounts receivables, then just use that number. Again, net sales divided by your average accounts receivable. And then if I give you 2 separate years, you're going to have to add those together and divide it by 2. So for this company or this exercise, for year 2, they had 335,280 in their net sales, and then they had 4140 and 34,800 for year 1 and year 2. You had to add those together and divide it by 2. So their accounts receivable turnover, that is how many times they're collecting their accounts receivables through the year. It was 8.8 times. Again, net sales divided by your average accounts receivable. Net sales divided by average accounts receivable. So for year 3, you had to take year 2 and year 3 of receivables, add it together. Net sales is on the top, and this was at 9.4 times. So they improve because you want to make sure that you turn it over faster. So they went from 8.8 to 9.4. So they're doing better with that. But if you compare it to their competitors of 11, they're not as good as their competitors. So year over year, they did good, but not compared to their competitors. And then the one from chapter 8 was your days sales uncollected. This is how many days it's taking to collect our accounts receivables. And so with this one for chapter 8, again, the formula, page 304, this is accounts receivable divided by net sales times 365. Don't forget the 365. So again, accounts receivable divided by net sales times 365. How many days it takes to collect the accounts receivables. All right, so for year 2 and year 3 for this company, you can see that they have their year 1 and year 2. So here's your year 1, and here's your year 2. So year 1, it's taking 15.5 days. Year 2 is taking 14.6. So that's good. It's taking less time, and so that's really good. We're collecting better. So either we have improved our credit policies by maybe making sure that we get on people if they're 24 days past due or a few days past due before it gets to be too much. Better credit checks, underwriting is better, things like that. So again, if we can get people to pay, that's better overall. So again, chapter 8 and 9, June 18th. I got the whole day to do it, 2 hours. I'll make sure that you have the email with the link to this video and the forms. And then I wish you the best when you're taking the test.